All right, everybody. I just want to welcome you back to Immersive Denver's Immersive Espresso. I think you all know the format. We stream to Facebook and to here to Zoom important topics that every immersive creator needs to know about. And I'm super excited to have Taylor Davidson joining us. Taylor not only works in the insurance business, he is the man that helped us secure insurance for the Denver Immersive Gathering. So never let it be said that we don't practice what we preach here. And with that, Taylor, maybe you could give us a quick introduction to you, your company, and what you do for a living.
For sure. So my name's Taylor Davidson. My company is Neil Benton Arts and Entertainment. There is no person named Neil Benton. Those are the middle names of myself, Taylor Benton Davidson, and my wife, Rachel Neil Davidson. So people do call and ask for Neil sometimes, and I say, no, that's not what that is. But we do nothing but arts and entertainment, risk management, insurance, and consulting. Those are the only clientele we work with. We've had a exclusive specialty in that for the last 10 years, and I was working prior to that for many years with producers, creators of different kinds. And one of the really interesting areas that we have developed, I believe I don't know another agency that has a specialty in this in the country, is in immersive experiential theater and other types of immersive experiential events. So we insure a number of the largest experiential producers in the country, and it all started with working with small one-off producers doing small, different events in private homes and different things like that. One of my earlier clients ran a 1 year series of events that was all kind of house parties based around the courtship of Frankenstein's monster and his bride. And that was so cool that they went from the party where they met to the party where they got engaged to the wedding to the baby shower. It was so cool. And this all ran over kind of a 1 year period. And I just got super intrigued. And when I hear about something really cool like that, I like to lean in. And at that time, it was extremely difficult to insure immersive clientele. It is still actually extremely difficult, but it's not impossible anymore. When I started the Ghost Ship tragedy was very recently in the rearview mirror, which I don't know how many of you know that, but it was kind of an artist collective up in the Bay Area, and there was a fire and people died, and that had actually caused a major clampdown in California and other states, and a bunch of the insurers got really touchy about this type of stuff. And so we kind of became tip of the spear, reintegrating and finding new ways to handle the risk management and to find carriers that would take these clients. And we have been, successively reopening the door to different kinds of immersive clientele. And the biggest thing that I will say is the biggest kind of lever of success that we have has been the progression of professionalization within the space. It started out, as so many of these things do, with sort of some wildcat, producers out there kind of doing things on their own. And over time, we've really seen a professional class of experiential and immersive producers emerging. The entrepreneurial sort of class within the community, and those people, finding those people is really the edge of the wedge that has allowed us to allow bigger and more interesting things to happen over time, with proper risk management, proper insurance, and all the rest.
So great. That's an awesome introduction. And I'm kind of curious if you could add one more thing to it. And then I had
Sure.
I had some questions I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
some kind of, fact or fiction kind of questions.
Absolutely. And I do have one thing that I wanted
Yeah.
to present today, but I do want to mostly spend the time on that. So did you have a follow-up question, or did you want me to get into this little quick thing?
I think the main question I just like to follow up is just, I know it seems really obvious, but why insurance? Why even buy insurance?
Sure. So insurance is there to transfer, and this gets into the broader topic of risk management. Risk management really has four parts: elimination, mitigation, transfer, and retention. Okay, so those are your four strategies when there's a risk, which is any sort of risk of loss, injury, illness, accident that could cause physical, personal, physical, financial loss to any sort of organization. That's risk, or these chances of loss. And there's different ways to manage the risk along those four lines. You can just eliminate whatever it was. You can mitigate it. You can make it less impactful. You can transfer risk in a variety of ways, and then you can just retain it. That's actually a risk management strategy. Insurance is a subset of transfer, where basically you take a subset of the risks that your project entails, that your operations entail. Your house. Whatever your house, your apartment, et cetera. There's certain risks that are entailed in owning or leasing an apartment or a home. And you can take some of that risk, the financial side of it, and transfer it to an insurance company. They hold a big pot of money and they say, okay, if X happens, we will give you Y. If A happens, we will give you B. And you have a contract that's written out. And so by contract, you transfer some of the risk of owning the home or running the event, et cetera, under different scenarios to the insurance carrier. And that's the fundamentals of what insurance is. And those can be, like I said, injuries, accidents on the property, damage to property, car accidents. All of these things, when you're dealing with insurance, have financial impacts on the organization that insurance is there to help mitigate and overcome to some degree.
Okay, that's awesome. And that's a great background. So, and by the way, I mean, it's a small group. If you guys want to chime in, grab the camera, ask a question, great. But I want to run what I would consider to be some common statements that I hear in the creative community about insurance. And you tell me fact or fiction why, okay?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is, I'm a poor artist or I'm a poor producer. Let people sue me. I don't have anything anyway.
Yeah. That's kind of the wildcatting that I was talking about. And what I would say is there is some truth to that. And it's not what you need to understand is that what insurance is there to do, and this actually goes back to that professionalization thing that I was talking about. What insurance is there to do is help make sure you survive a loss.
Yeah.
But somebody who doesn't care about surviving the loss, they don't care about the loss, really. And so what I would say is what you need to understand about that is that larger venues, things that you want to get involved in, financiers, that you might need to run your project, locations that you may need to run your project, et cetera, they care that you care about losses. So if you want to rent a theater or something like that, they need to know that you care about those losses. And one of the biggest things that we have done that has been an ongoing project is both convincing the carriers that certain immersive producers are going concerns, because honestly, there are a lot of immersive experiential people out there that are like, screw it, I'm just done if something happens. Well, the insurers don't want you. They want to know that you want to survive a loss. They are looking for going concerns. And one of the reasons that they're looking for going concerns, people who want to make a profit and run their business for multiple years and have success and blow up and be sustainable, is because the primary risk management mitigation that the carriers have is knowing that you want to survive the loss. If you want to survive the loss, you are very likely to be taking good risk management measures on your own without them having to impose stuff on you. And it's sort of the baseline of what the carriers are looking for to give you insurance. And that idea, it's been interesting because we've had to work it on both sides, is getting immersive experiential entrepreneurs, the producers, EPs, et cetera, business owners, to understand that and be able to demonstrate it to the carriers and convince the carriers that that group exists within immersive and experiential. And there are ways that we can show it, like me saying to somebody, show me your budget and your expected stuff for the next year, and they go, I don't know, whatever it's going to be. Well, the carrier's not going to take you very seriously if you
Yeah.
don't have some prospective plan, right? So there's things like that that help that. But yeah, I mean, you basically have to say, well, you've got, for that person who doesn't want insurance, you got to go, okay, do you want to survive a loss? Do you care about the injuries that could happen to the people you're recruiting? Do people assume that you will take care of them? Is there an unstated thing that if somebody gets injured on your project that you're going to take care of them? Well, you need to have workers' comp for that. You might need to have general liability for that. So there's personal responsibility. But a lot of it does go back to, do you want to be a real business? Do you want to do something that creates a career that blows up and you can take this thing you can tour this thing nationwide? If you do, you need to take your business seriously in a way that will make the carriers take your business seriously.
That's a great answer. So I'm going to call this first statement a fact, but a sad fact that really, if you embrace that fact, you're really not, you don't have a future. You're fiddling around. Okay.
Right.
So here's my next I think common claim. Ready? That's all well and good, but I can't afford insurance. It's too expensive.
Yeah. And here's the other thing that sometimes might be true. We don't judge that. Again, if you want to go guerrilla style and throw a house party without insurance, you are never going to get judgment from my team. You can still call us and we could talk you through the risk management that you should think about, even without insurance. There are higher minimums, right, on production packages. Now, once you clear those minimums, it doesn't really go up much. It doesn't go up real fast after that. I mean, our larger clients are paying, 2% of gross, right, on their projects. But if you've got $1,000 to spend on kind of a house party type immersive, then yeah, I mean, your minimum premium on something like that could be hundreds of dollars for a day of almost no coverage, right? Like a GL only, very limited, almost nothing. And you might go, well, I don't have $400 to spend on that because that's 40% of my overall money, or that's 100% of my overall money. This also connects back to the going concern. We have clients that have multi-million-dollar policies. I want to make sure everybody heard me there. Not multi-million-dollar annual budgets. Their policies cost millions of dollars every year. Yeah. The reason I say that is to emphasize this is an explosively profitable business opportunity. If you know how to run it and are serious, you can run this and become successful and make a career out of it. It's not easy ever to run a business, but this is not something where there's no money to be made. You can run a successful business, but really the minimum premiums you are looking at for a proper sort of annual package in this are going to be in that $5,000 to $10,000 range. Now, once you clear that bar, you're not going to see huge increases as you grow. It will grow, but as a proportion of your budget, it's actually going to drop. So really, when we talk about too expensive, we're really talking about those minimum premiums. And the main thing that I want people to understand there, and again, a one-off project, you're not talking 5,000, 10,000, but you could be talking $2 or $3 grand for a one-off project, or maybe less. It just depends on the specifics. But really, what I like to emphasize there is that there is a reason why, like, movie studios have lots of projects under their umbrella. It's because having lots of projects under your umbrella means you can spread those minimum premiums and those minimum costs across lots of stuff. So if you say you can't afford something, probably what that means is you can't afford it by yourself. And what you should be doing is looking at bringing a group of producers together into a production team, into a production company that actually can clear those minimums, and then you're off to the races. Because once you clear those minimums, you can be running projects 365 days a year, 24/7, and your pricing's really not changing that much. Yeah. So that differentiation between the cost of insurance versus the minimum premiums on the policies, I think, is a really important thing to clarify.
So I'm not sure how we call this one. I guess we call this a complicated fact that you should be able to afford insurance if you want to grow. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to grow, get some buddies together who also want to run projects, get yourself into a group, clear that minimum premium, and then what you'll find is your day by day cost is actually not much at all. Could be
Yeah, yeah,
25 bucks, 50 bucks. It could be really low if you've got enough people together doing lots of multiple projects.
that's a great insight. So I think a related statement that you probably hear is, yeah, I mean, this all makes sense to me, but like, I'm not doing anything risky, so I don't really need insurance.
Sure. Ah, anybody can sue you for anything at any time. My business law professor, when I was in college, he was kind of this old Tucson cowboy guy. Came in with his bolo tie and his hat and his boots every day. And but for the first half of the class, he had this thing that he would do where he would lay out some scenario, and then he would ask the class, like, "Can you get sued for this?" And invariably, for the first half, somebody would yell out, "No, that's not illegal," and he goes, "Wrong, 50 bucks." Because $50 was the current filing fee in Pima County at the Pima County Courthouse. And for 50 bucks, you could sue me, right? Whatever. Doesn't matter if you've got a case, doesn't matter if it's legitimate. And what we like to mention to people is that anybody at any time for anything can sue you. And you can be run out of business by a $50,000 legal bill just as easily as you can be run out of business by a $50,000 bodily injury settlement, right? Like either it's still 50 grand, you're out of business, right? And wouldn't it be terrible to win the case and still be out of business, right? So again, I think it comes back to the sustainability of the company. If you want to stay around, you want to think about what you want legal defense for. And legal defense is often the first most important thing that your insurance is actually providing. Put the settlements aside, I can assume that my clients never make any mistakes or never at fault for anything their entire career, which is never true. But I can still assume that and still know that you need insurance because competent, rapid legal defense is like often the critical element of risk management is making sure that an attorney who knows this kind of lawsuit is on your team immediately, same day, working this for you. And that you have the right kinds of coverages that will cover those different types of things, which that gets a little bit complicated, what you actually want to be covered for and what covers what and what doesn't, because general liability does not cover you for everything that you need. It's one very tiny piece of the puzzle.
All right, so we're going to call that one's fiction. Yeah. So another statement I've probably heard before, which is, well, I'm more likely to get sued if I have insurance because people figure there's a payday.
No, that's not true. Because they don't know. They don't know what insurance you have unless you're spreading it around. There's an exception to this rule, but it doesn't apply to any entry level producers. We actually have some of our largest clients where we actually have multiple drafts of their proof of insurance because we actually don't want anyone knowing what their full limits are because they actually are targets. But the reason they're targets is because they're massive. They're $100 million companies, right? They actually have a target on their back. There are other people who have targets on their back because of financiers or it's some sort of non-innocuous topic or whatever, right? If you are doing extreme torture room, kind of Halloween stuff, you're uninsurable. I can just tell you, we can insure around the edges of you. We can do haunted houses and whatnot, but that's currently an uninsurable space. That space exists in the experiential immersive space. I don't know if it's relevant to anybody who's on the call today, but these are calls we field, right? And very immersive. That's uninsurable, right? So most of the time, people don't know what insurance you have or don't have or whatever. And unless you're huge or have some target on your back, they're not, whether you have insurance isn't going to make you more likely to be sued. But when you get sued, whether you have insurance will definitely determine how that outcome goes.
Great. So that one's fiction. Okay, so
Yeah,
here's one that's related,
100%.
and I
Unless
think
you're $100 million company. Again,
right.
if you're a giant company, then yes, we are not showing everybody your full limits because that could make you more likely. But yeah, for normal
But in
people,
general,
total
yeah,
fiction.
they're already likely to be sued for any reason. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm an immersive producer, and immersive is hard to describe. It's complicated. I've heard it's just complicated to get insurance for the kind of work I do. It's just brain damage. It's not worth the effort.
Um, it is complicated, but not on your part. It's complicated for me. That's what I would say. So it's true that it's complicated. Um, but it's not if you're working with a different agency, pretty much yeah, you're it's going to be a giant pain. And I don't say that to bash other agencies. It's just certain agencies have specializations, right? And we actually know where to go under most circumstances and who will take what and whatever. Most agencies don't have that knowledge. And so what I would say is it's true depending on the agency you go with. And I would say it's not true if you're with us. It could be true if you're with others, or they're not going to understand what you're doing, and you're going to end up insured incorrectly. That's the other trick to that. If it seems really simple with an agency who doesn't actually specialize in immersive, there's a high likelihood that you were written wrong. That could be a problem.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting observation. I probably have worth the anecdote that, again, we did use your company to broker our insurance, and it was painless. I mean, other than writing the check,
Thanks.
it's never fun, but it wasn't bad. But
Yeah.
I really did feel like that you guys steered us through what we actually needed for our event. It was very sensitive to the nature of the kind of event we were holding. So I think that's true. That's really the value of using a broker.
Yeah.
Let me ask you two more just kind of general questions, and I think they kind of put some bookends on this, and then we can go back into discussion. But back to fact and fiction. So I think one is, and this kind of, you talked a little bit about this, but the claim that well, I'll buy insurance, but at the end of the day, you won't pay out the claims anyway. You'll deny the claims.
I could pull this report, but I think we paid over $1 million in claims last year in our book. It's not. That's just false. That's a biggest fiction. It's weird because the movies, they make all these stories about insurance companies not paying claims, and it's in the news about insurance companies not paying claims and whatever. And it does that ever happen? Yes. Do people make mistakes in insurance and not pay claims that they should have? It does happen, but it is almost always 99.99% of the time a legitimate mistake somebody made. The carriers want to pay claims. The reason they want to pay claims is, one, that's their value proposition. That's core to their value proposition. We talk about that in terms of our client cycle. Our client cycle goes from first meeting you, right? We first meet Jeff, right? But if you look in our back end design for the business, our client cycle would not finish with Jeff until he's had a loss and we paid a claim. That could be many, 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 many years. But that's actually core to our value proposition. And we're trying to prevent things from happening. We don't want Jeff to have a claim. But you know what? He doesn't really get the value of the policy until we pay out for something, right? And the carriers do not want to deny valid claims, because you know what? There's a whole bunch of attorneys out there that are just yeah, you deny an easy one? Oh, that is just payday all day long for the attorneys. You go, oh, I should have had that paid. So if you ever hear of somebody who had some nightmare payment thing, it's almost always there is more to that story, and it's much more complicated than people thought, because there's so many attorneys out there that are just show me an easy layup of they denied some easy flood damage or easy building damage or whatever that should have been paid. But most of the time when you hear that there's some bad story about a claim being denied, it's because the client didn't actually have coverage for what they said they needed coverage for. Because some attorney looked at that and they're like, no, you very clearly here did not have flood coverage on your house. It says it right here. It's giant, big, bold, there's no flood coverage, and your house got flooded. And you're sorry that you didn't have flood coverage, but it's so clear that you didn't have flood coverage that there's no way to make this argument, because people do make decisions. And what you need to understand here, I'm going to very quickly show you guys something that I think is a good illustration of this. So I'm just going to share screen really, because I want you to see how complicated this gets. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So when we're looking here, this is sort of the world of risk, right? Here's tons of different examples of different losses that you can incur as a business, right? Trademark infringement, abuse of molestation, breach of contract, all sorts of stuff like that. Now, most of the time, what people are thinking about is general liability. That's what somebody asked you for, etc. The problem with general liability, is that it only covers this tiny little bit of this overall sort of world of risk, okay? And what is the reason for that? And people are like, oh, isn't general liability cover all my stuff? No, because general liability has this stack of exclusions all over it. There's no employer liability. There's no trademark IP stuff. There's no coverage for auto claims. There's no coverage for like personal injury stuff. There's like all that. Well, that's actually not quite right, but there's limitations on personal injury. So, and in the end, this one's the one that I really like to bang on, right? If we don't cover the underlying loss, we have no duty to defend the insured against any suit. So they don't provide legal defense if you don't have coverage for the type of incident that occurred, okay? So in the end, you need possibly directors and officers, employment practices liability. Commercial auto is extremely common, very important for what you guys do, right? Workers' comp and volunteer medical expense combined cover different types of employee and volunteer injuries. Professional liability, anybody who's getting into licensed IP or anything around there, you can have trademark infringement issues, different things around that. Crime policies are really, really important for certain things. Inland marine, massive. This is where all of your like rented equipment goes, any sort of prop sets, wardrobe stuff that you're dealing with. And then abuse and molestation is a massive thing. People can claim things happen, and you've got to make sure that that stuff is included. But here's one of the, so you guys see all the different policies, and this isn't even all, like, we're not talking kidnap and ransom here. We're not talking workplace violence, active shooter. I'm not talking about, like, there's a ton of stuff that's not on this page. And then there's untransferable risk. There's just some stuff that's not insurable. Like I was talking about earlier, the extreme haunted house torture room type stuff, which I'm not saying anybody on this call does, but again, we get these calls every year around this time for, will you insure my torture room, right? And we're like, sorry, we've looked into it and we can't insure those. They're non-insurable. And so you have to take 100% of the risk if that's the kind of immersive thing you want to do. And that's just an example, right? That's kind of relevant to what you guys do, at least in the space, right? But there's some things that are just untransferable. And so there's a whole bunch of different policies. And because there's all these exclusions on general liability, there's all these other things that kind of come in to make up a more complete insurance package. And what's really critical is that basically 0% of organizations will place everything that is available the first time they place insurance. Very commonly, you're going to place GL only the first time you place insurance, because that's what you can afford at the moment. And it's where you have, some reason, right? There is somebody saying you have to have GL, because what you're protecting them against is third-party lawsuits, which is what your venue cares about, because they're not running the event. They care about third-party lawsuits coming at them from non-affiliated people. So that's what they're going to ask for, because you're protecting them. But pretty much GL does very little to protect you. if you've got any directors up, which is a major thing, making sure that your people are taken care of if they are hurt or injured, that's a major issue. And it gets missed if there's no volunteer accident or medical or workers' comp, hired non-owned auto. All of these things go together to make up sort of this spectrum of policies that you need to make sure that you are fully covered. But again, I will reemphasize, nobody has all of that when they start. Nobody's pushing, nobody's saying you have to place all of these things. But that's where we go back to proper risk management: elimination, mitigation, transfer, and retention. If you're not insured for something, you're retaining that risk. And you have to be really, really extra careful in those spaces where you have made a decision, either just due to price or other reasons, that you're not going to have the insurance. You have to keep it in mind that you are 100% on the hook if something happens in that space.
It's a lot to keep in mind. Again, a reason to work with a professional.
That's why we do it.
Leah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just got a quick question. And this might be a different thing entirely. I've been to immersive experiences where I have to sign a waiver before I can enter in. And I probably don't do a good job of reading through what all I'm signing there, as most people do. But so when you're talking about places that aren't, that, you know, like the torture houses and stuff that you guys don't insure and stuff like that, where does signing a waiver come into play for that? If we are insured, if I do have an experience that we do want people to sign a waiver for, just because of things like flashing lights or you know, being in complete darkness, where does that come into play?
Fabulous question. So waivers are super, super important. Okay, having proper waivers, getting everybody to sign them, they're incredibly important. Our insurance carriers, in some cases, particularly when it comes to errors and omissions, professional liability stuff, there are certain fairly strict requirements on what waivers you're getting people to sign. However, how much do waivers matter once you're in court? Almost none. They have almost zero value once you're in court. What they are for, what they're actually for as a risk management tool, is to keep people from suing you. Okay? Because here's the thing. Fact of the matter is, I signed a waiver. I took responsibility for it. The vast majority of people have a moral sense that they said, I'm responsible if I get hurt. And then when they get hurt or whatever happens, they go, I signed the thing that said I was responsible. So they don't go any further than that, right? They might ask you to help them with some immediate kind of first aid. We're not saying you're being neglectful of people, but beyond first aid and maybe giving them a couple grand for the ambulance or something, which is what your med expense is for, by the way. It's no fault coverage. That's the whole point of a med expense policy, is so we didn't say we're at fault. We just threw a couple grand at them to cover their insurance deductible, right? Or whatever. Both of these things, med expense and your waivers, are 100% just trying to make sure that person doesn't call an attorney. Because as soon as that person calls an attorney, all that attorney has to do is show that the person didn't understand what they were getting into, and the waiver gets thrown out. It gets ripped up. Because it's really easy to show that there was something weird or that wasn't fully explained on the waiver that they didn't understand. They signed, but they didn't know that there would be a zombie in the haunted house, and they've got a particular fear of zombies. And it's like, well, really? Well, all right, we're not going to judge that. So here you go. So that's the main rule of thumb. I don't want to give anybody the impression that they're really not really important, but there is too much reliance often by people saying, like, I don't need that because I have waivers. It's like, one person sues you and you're SOL, because it'll get thrown out. What you're trying to do is get a commitment from people to not sue, is what you're doing with the waivers. And that's actually really, really important.
Thank you. That's really, well, that's a great, I had no idea about any of that. So thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Good to know.
So great question. So last fact or fiction here for you. Ready? You'll sleep better with insurance.
Oh, 100%. 100%. It's extremely critical. That's why I always end that little thing that I showed, which we're kind of freestyling here, but I thought it might be relevant at some point. I end on that one slide that shows untransferable risk. It's really important to remember that no insurance policy covers everything. There are exclusions and limitations in every single insurance policy, some massive. I mean, I showed you how many policies it takes even to cover most of, not all, kind of that space that I showed. But in the end, yeah, you should feel more comfortable you running your event, sleeping at night, all the rest, knowing that you have some level of financial coverage if something goes wrong. So if you ever have something kind of niggling at your brain, like I'm really worried about this, asking whether there's an insurance policy that can in some way transfer some of the financial risk off of you, particularly for somebody to build a career and create a company that is a going concern, should be a major relief. And I'll tell you, the first time you have a real claim and you call the carrier and they have you on the line within an hour with an attorney that is just a super pro in what you are dealing with right now, that's when you'll be like, oh my God. I was freaking out and I feel okay now because I've got somebody in my court that actually knows how to take care of this.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been a fantastic talk. I'd kind of like to end the whole thing on saying, insurance is supposed to be for unexpected stuff, right? I mean, it never takes away our responsibility as event throwers and producers and performers to do things that are safe and responsible. And I think we all start there. But yeah, I guess, designing experiences, especially maybe experiences that are unusual or intense, it's a lot of unknowns. So maybe give Taylor a call. I'm not trying to do a commercial for you.
Please do.
I'm completely terrified at this point in time about everything. So I need more insurance.
And we deal with it a lot.
Yeah.
We deal with it a lot.
We got a couple more minutes. We got like one more quick question and then we'll wrap it up.
How do we get a hold of you?
Sure. You can get me at here. I'll put my email in the chat and our direct line. That's not it.
And I'll get when we upload the videos, I'll get their contact info with the video for sure.
And you can find us online at neilbenton.com. So any of those three, you can call our line, you can drop me an email, you can drop on our website. There's a contact form on there, and we can get you taken care of.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much, Taylor. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working with you. And I've learned more than I feel like I should know about insurance right now, but there's probably even more to know. But yeah, a fascinating conversation, and I think an important one for the immersive arts and entertainment world to be having.
Yep. You guys are coming up. Like, I mean, it's something that I'm thrilled that we noticed early and have been able to do the work to put things together. We still get projects sometimes that are hard to land the plane on, but more and more every week we learn how to thread the needle for different immersive producers, and it expands it's an area that we love to work in.